Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda and today I have for you my March wrap-up. So this month I didn't read as many books as I had hoped to, but some of them were pretty long, and I also participated in the Irish Readathon that was hosted by Aoife, Leanne, and Elaine. I will leave all three of their channels linked down below if you want to go check them out and see what the Irish Readathon was all about, and just, meet some or find some new booktubers to follow. So I kind of liked the format of last month where I went from my lowest rated book to my highest rated book, so I think I want to continue with that. So the first book that I have on my list is dun, 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 finally finished Dragonfly and Amber by Diana Gabaldon. I had started this in September maybe of last year, and I just got stuck around the 170 something page mark. I was stopped in the middle of a chapter. I was just having the hardest time picking this up and finishing it. So I was given a link by a fellow book club or in the Creating & Co. book club group. She gave me a link to Scribd where I could sign up for 2 free months to just kind of test it out and see how I liked it, and the audiobook for this was on there, so I decided to start from the beginning, and I ended up flying through it. It was also fun because my friend, who I also work with, she started binge reading this series, and I had finished this book only maybe 2 or 3 days before she finished this book. Now she's all the way in Drums of Autumn and I have some catching up to do, but it was really fun to have somebody to chat about with this. I'm not sure yet if I like this more than I like Outlander. I think I liked to have more of the politics and see a little bit more of Europe in the country and the like. And it was a little less heavy on the romance, but it was still there. So still not exactly what I want out of these books, but a decent enough story. So the audiobook for this was a total of 39 hours and 1 minute, and I did give this book a 3-star rating. I'm hoping that they'll just go up from this. I can't remember if I gave Outlander a 3 or a 4-star. It might have been a 4-star. So I'm hoping the rest of the books get better, but that was Dragonfly and Amber. And the next book that I read was a book I borrowed from a friend, and then I ended up getting a copy myself for free, but it's the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Schaefer and Annie Barrows. This is a book that is written and told in letters. So we follow our main character, Juliet, who wrote a column in her best friend's older brother's newspaper during World War II. And since that has ended, she kind of wants to come up with a new story to write. I believe the column ends up getting published as a book, and she's just looking for that next idea that really sparks something in her and that she feels like needs to be told with the world. So she ends up getting a letter from this gentleman named, oh gosh, what was it? Oh, I don't remember his name. But she gets a letter from him because he stumbles upon a book that was previously owned by her, and she had written her name and stuff in it. So he found her address and wrote a letter to her just saying how much the book touched him and wanting to know more about the author himself, and then just kind of, they developed a friendship through writing these letters, and she starts to be really intrigued by the stories she hears from him, because he and some fellow islanders on Guernsey Island ended up starting a literary society kind of by accident, as Guernsey became occupied by the Germans during World War II. So this is the story of their relationship and friendship and how she meets new people and finds out more about herself and just kind of grows as a person and as a writer. And I really enjoyed this. I think letter format goes really quickly for me, and it's not super hard for me to piece pieces of information together and keep them, I guess, in chronological order or in an order that makes sense. So I did really enjoy this book. It was 274 pages, and I gave it a 3-star rating as well. And then my last 3-star rating, I forgot to grab, but it is The Lot of Dreams by Peter Burns. And this book was 390 pages. So this was a book that I read for the Irish Readathon, and I read it because it has green on the cover, which was one of the challenges or prompts. And this is the story, or it's a loose story, of Peter Burns' family's immigration to America. So we meet this young lad named Fergus who loses his family to the famine and hunger. And then it's just his story of how he learns to survive and build relationships with people, and basically just build a life for himself. So he meets some really interesting people along the road that teach him life lessons and the sort like that. So I enjoyed it for the most part. I think it would have been a little bit more enjoyable for me if one of the big issues I have is, and I know this is historical fiction, so it is not shocking that it's a part of this, and it's not like a fantasy where it doesn't need to be there. This is really telling the story of this man's family, but there was some animal cruelty in it, which always puts a bad taste in my mouth and does color my perception of books and the rest of the book as I'm reading it. But other than that, I did enjoy it. I thought it was an interesting story, and I thought the characters within it were really, really neat and really unique, and just fun characters. So then my first 4-star read of the month was Trinity by Leon Uris. This was another book that I read for the Irish Readathon for the prompt of a book that is older than you. This was published in, I think, 76, so quite a bit older than me. And I really like this. This took place mostly in Northern Ireland, so in Derry, Londonderry, and Belfast, but it also took place in a little bit of Dublin, well, quite a bit in Dublin actually, and a little bit, I believe, in England as well, but mostly like the Belfast, Derry, and Donegal areas of Northern Ireland. So this story is told from the perspective of a young man named Seamus, and it's basically about his best friend Connor's life. So we start out reading about them as they're, I think, around the age of 7 up until late in Connor's life, and it's a coming of age story. It's also pretty hard hitting in the subjects that it talks about. This takes place not long after the potato famine, within 50 years of it, and it's really when the Protestants and Catholics are having their strife, and just seeing how that shaped the history and the culture of Northern Ireland and Ireland as a whole, and the things like that, how people had to fight, especially the Catholics, for their land, and try to prevent the British from just overtaking all of their land and kind of imposing their laws as they want them. So this is a really interesting story. I listened to it on Scribd as well, and it was 34 hours and 15 minutes, and like I said, I gave it a 4-star rating. This book's really interesting because there's quite a few parts, and in the beginning of each part you get a map of the town that it really focuses on, which I liked quite a bit. So I would really be interested in seeing more of Leon Uris's writing and just experiencing that. I believe he does write mostly about Ireland, so it would be interesting to check out a bit more. And the last book that I read at the very end of the month, kind of squeezed in there, I was able to get it on audiobook through my library, was Brooklyn by Colm Tobin, and this was a 7-hour and 37-minute audiobook that I gave a 4-star rating. I really enjoyed this book. I mostly picked it up, because I wanted to add another book in on the Irish Readathon. Even though it didn't cover a prompt, I just wanted to read as many Irish books as I could during the month. But also I am interested in watching the movie because it has Saoirse Ronan in it, and I do really like her as an actress. So I wanted to read that before I watched the movie. But basically we follow a young girl who, not necessarily by her choice, gets sent to Brooklyn, New York. They're in her town in Ireland. The economy is kind of down, so there aren't a lot of job opportunities, and there's just not a lot of growth for her within her town. So her mom and sister kind of conspire to get her over to America, working in a retail shop, and it's just about kind of her coming of age story, learning about a new culture and a new way of life, kind of putting the past behind her and moving forward with things. And it's a nice little story. She did a thing that I wasn't super pleased with at the end of the book. But it was kind of, I guess, a way of seeing her struggle with not knowing where she fit in with her old life and wanting to kind of be back there, and then just deciding that this is where she is now and this is where she needs to be or is going to be. So I did enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to watching the movie. On an unrelated but kind of related note, I did have a funny coincidence and an impromptu readathon during the month as well. And the only reason I made this connection was because Cam at Wolfshop Publishing had mentioned that he accidentally read 3 dog-related books kind of consecutively. And I noticed while reading that this month 3 of my books had a character in it named Fergus, and I thought that was pretty funny when I made that connection. But in total, I read 5 books. The number of pages I read was 664, and the total time listened was 80 hours and 53 minutes. So with my star rating for each book and averaging that out between all 5, I had an average star rating of 3.4, which I think is actually my highest for the year so far. It is. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading more books coming in April with the OWL's Magical Readathon, and just getting into books that I am interested in reading that I know I will enjoy, to bump that average rating up throughout the year. So I would love to know if you participated in the Irish Readathon, if you've read any of these books, what your favorite or least favorite book for the month was, what your opinions on the reads were, and all of that. So please do let me know down in the comments below, and I will chat with you there until my next video. Bye!